On his Amazon profile, guest describes himself as a private family man with a wife and a few children who understands that he lives on the wild side. Now settling down, he stays on the down low in an effort to protect his family from his shenanigans. He is a pan slash bisexual author of urban fiction from Black Mountain, North Carolina, Cedric Quincy. Hey, Cedric, how's it going?
I'm good. How you doing?
Awesome, awesome. So, first, I have to break down this intro. Um, so, let's clarify it for the viewers here. So, first of all, you agreed to do a visual interview, correct?
Yes, I did agree to do a visual interview.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. So let me break this down first. So Cedric Quincy is a private family man with a wife and a few children who understand that he lives on the wild side. So first half of that bio. So what is your definition of the wild side?
Wild side for me is um definitely being sexually liberated, sexually free, um, being exploratory, if you will, um, swinging, if you will, being open to trying just about anything or almost anything. There's some things I'm not even gonna cross, at least once. Even if you don't like it, you can say, "Hey, I tried it. I don't like it." So that's for me. That's exploring the wild side.
Okay, okay, interesting. So now for the second half of that bio, it says, now settling down, he stays on the down low in an effort to protect his family from his shenanigans. So a lot of people could read that and think that you're kind of leading a double life. So is this the case? And what does it mean that you're on the down
Well, at the time I did the bio, um, when we created Cedric Quincy, as a brand for my for one set of LGBTQ novels I was writing, I was more known for being a published young adult fiction author, and I had very strong ties to the urban fiction street lit community. So, of course, writing, although I write in a lot of different genres, writing LGBTQ books was not really acceptable or tolerant at that time. It couldn't be known that I was doing my LGBTQ works, which encompass both the what later has become the male female books I'm known for, and the set of lesbian books that I've written as well. I couldn't have that known, like, I was using my face and my image for my young adult novels, or for being involved in promoting and advocating for street literature, or doing things with the youth. So that was more of a secret. Also, I've never really been someone that publicly broadcast, "Oh, I'm, pansexual, and I'm out here and doing all these events and stuff like that." I more or less, I live life day to day, and what I do behind closed doors, or wherever I do it at, is at that moment. It's not something that is like, prominent, or like every time you see me, you don't see me advocating, not just advocating, you don't see me, broadcasting or airing out what I do sexually or who I am sexually.
low? Right, right. So it sounds like your your sense of being down low is kind of really separating um, your your name from or kind of basically a pseudonym.
Yes.
Do I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, okay. Um, Now, how does your wife deal with your sexuality? Because and I ask this because I feel like a lot of people would think that it's unusual for somebody to to be outward to be out with their bisexuality and have a wife that was okay with that. It's not common, at least. It's not common knowledge, at least. So how does that work for you?
It is a challenge. It is a challenge. I think it's easy because, as I said before, you know, I do other things that are maybe deemed to be outside of the lifestyle, meaning that my sexuality is not tagline first. Like when I go to work, I am an employee at the company I work for. My sexuality is checked at the door, as with a lot of people, because I currently work a day job where that is not. I know it's not publicly accepted. We may have policies in place, but let's be honest. You know when you walk in the door whether or not you can be flaming, you can be discreet, or you really need to be low key. Um, so even doing this interview is kind of, I would say, a risk, but something I take in consideration, and and cautious of in that avenue. Um, as far as how she dealt with it, I mean, like with some of my girlfriends, they've known it's not a secret as far as they've never come into anything with me blindly. If we chose to add another couple or another person in the bedroom, they knew what time it was. So it's never like I led anyone on, I deceived anybody. You knew. That was one of the first, like when we have our talk, we meet, if we're meeting on that level, then I tell you. You know what I'm saying? So it's never a surprise or you didn't heard a story about me. No, you know.
Right, right,
And then again, you also know how I feel about it, how I feel about, like I'm not, I'm more discreet than anything. So it's not like I'm, out there with it or out there throwing it in someone's face or out there trying to impose it on someone else or whatever other people's views are. I'm more or less, like I said, when I go to work, I go to work. And then, when I'm at home or it's time for us to play, then it's playtime. You know what I'm saying? Let's go.
okay,
But
got you. All
that's
right.
how I address that.
Got you, got you, got you. So let's move into your work a little bit. So what you say about your work differs from site to site. On Amazon, you say you write erotica and alternative fiction. On your blog, you say you write urban and young adult fiction. So I think you explained this a little bit. So do you still write in all four of these genres, and which of these do you enjoy most?
I actually writing that and many more. Um, I think it's different because at the time period I wrote the blogs, when we initially set up the Cedric Quincy name and stuff like that, we knew we had to separate. Like there's a very clear distinction between Cedric Quincy and my young adult brand. And as I said before, at the time I was more well known as a young adult, author, more well known as the advocate for street fiction and urban fiction and stuff like that. So that public persona was, what got me into schools, what got me into speaking, is still today my top selling um, brand. It was my bread and butter because I didn't just, make money off of writing and selling those books. I made money off of creating events, supporting young adult literature. I made money off of um, doing speaking engagements and what have you, speaking with book clubs, doing things with schools. So it wasn't just the brand that I used to, write and sell my books. I promoted all young adult authors, you know. So that had that moment. And then like with Cedric Quincy, yeah, his books are, I mean, for as of now, they are, or how we started, that was something we wanted to create a niche market in. Because when we looked at LGBTQ fiction and trying to figure out what would make Cedric stand apart, there was no like and not to make it a big race thing, when you think about male fiction, male female fiction, usually those are white ladies who are assumed to be straight writing those stories. There
Right.
women who, after I've interviewed and talked with some of them, most of them don't live the lifestyle. It's their fantasy. Their quote unquote gay best friend is telling them different things, or they know swingers that are telling them different things.
Hmm.
and they've never experienced that. That's where when it came to me writing it, I done it. You know what I'm saying? So, and then too, to be a man is, I'm not gonna say there are not men out there that are writing it, but there are not too many, black or white, that are, or any race for that matter, that are really writing from the man's perspective and with the male experience in mind. Being able to show a balance that, bisexuality within the black community can exist, because I think when you think about um, everyone on the spectrum, bisexuals are considered the unwanted bastards, especially black men that identify as bisexual or pansexual. They're not really, you're definitely not one in the straight community because you're blamed for the spread of HIV and AIDS, which is not true. You're not really one in the gay community because they feel, everyone needs you feel like you need to pick a side, and no one, I think, until I started doing Cedric Quincy books, even remotely had the idea that, hey, it might be okay if he's like that,
Right,
or if he
right.
thinks that way. So that made it to where I could really, hit those stories, and then I could actually portray people as people.
Hmm.
They're more than who they label, and that's why I love my series, and why, probably, as we talked about separation of the brands, Free Your Mind is probably one of my ultimate favorite books I wrote, because there's more to Corey than who's sleeping with. He's a father, he's a business owner, he has all these different layers to him, and then he has this attraction to this man and this woman too.
So let me ask you, first of all, what are your thoughts on those other authors who don't necessarily live the lifestyle but kind of write about like a fantasized version of it?
Can't really criticize them too much, because there are a lot of people who write urban fiction who don't live the lifestyle either. There are a lot of people who built their names and their brands off of a lifestyle they've never really been part of. Um, a lot of them have had help writing their books. A lot of us in the community have helped write some of these books, but another topic, and I'm going to behave for this interview. But um, I'm not offended. I just want a chance to present a voice, and I'm happy that for the most part I've been, especially in the literary community, I've been accepted. When I, link up with other, especially when I link up with other black um male writers who are on the spectrum, it's like acceptance. It's like, okay, we're getting something different. I mean, you bring something unique, and we like it. And you're a little twisted, which is okay, because it's like, when I write my fantasy or science fiction stuff, obviously I don't live those things. I'm not a warlock or a witch, but I've written about warlocks and witches. I'm not a mutant, although I wish I kind of had Professor X's abilities. I get some things done. But no, in all seriousness, I feel like what I've always felt, even when we talk about the beginning of the modern day version of street literature, there's room for everybody. And you just have to be consistent with it and be willing to, work on your craft and find your niche.
Very cool. Okay. So also, I wanted to ask you, like, were did you feel like you made an impact on the bisexual community by writing the books that you have?
Mm, yes and no. I think yes, in the fact that it's like they do exist, and they're being, I'm presenting one person's view of
Hmm.
what it's like to be male. And
Well, let me clarify. Let me clarify my question.
okay, no problem.
Um, do you have you received any feedback from other bisexual readers who may have felt like they were kind of left out or not, or kind of in the
Yeah,
same space that you
yeah.
explained?
I've definitely gotten some. There are some people that are like, I'm not an alien. It's like I'm finally meeting someone else that's thinks this way or feels this way. It's kind of like how I felt when I watched a couple of the web series, and I got to see men that still had relationships with both. It was like, okay, finally we're presenting something that's not just one, like usually when you see gave you on television up until, especially in modern day times, up until Empire, it was usually the feminized version of, you know, the gay lifestyle. The men had to be dressing in drag or, have feminine mannerisms. Like when you saw Jamal, was like, he's got a little hood in him and he's a little gangster. Oh, I like this. I finally found someone like me or close to me or something like that. So I definitely gotten some of those emails.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. So, um, how have your experiences with sexual orientation found their way into your work?
Um, I think the experiences found a way into work. It definitely gave me material to draw on, and even before I even acted on some of those thoughts, I had a very close friend that was gay that definitely helped me with some of those ideas and some of those, like when I was starting my writing career. He was definitely like, these are people to meet up with. These are people that they want stories written about them too, and these are people that it's okay to write these stories. It's like, I read Elin Harris when I was young and James Earl Hardy when I was young, but it's different meeting people that were closer to my age at the time that I was writing these stories. So it was like I really felt like, okay, we're out here and we can do it too, and be able to tell our stories in that way.
All right. Um, so now your misunderstanding of Don Ho series was completed with a final book in July of last year, 2016. So tell us about that series.
All right. This will probably get to one of the stories I definitely wanted to talk about in this series. When I first wrote the series, in 2009, I had just lost a teaching job. I had flunked out of grad school. I was at my wit's end because it was like, I spent all this money. I don't have nothing. I'm not doing anything. The economy was tanking because if you remember during that time, um, President Obama had inherited a mess financially. So, and a lot of people had gone through this thing where you still had people who I graduated school with in college. I graduated in 2004 with my bachelor's degree. You had a lot of people that were still unemployed or had um, part-time employed or underemployed is the word I'm looking for. They were very underemployed. So Blackberry Molasses was initially written as a vent of frustration and how some people could turn, like my main character turned to escorting to make ends meet while he still pursued writing, still tried to find other meaningful work. And in escorting, he met and had a variety of different relationships, um, which also filtered in. Then when he found one relationship he could commit to, because he never committed to a man before, that's when you see this same main character whose name also happens to be Cedric, um, in Free Your Mind. You got to see his view of the relationship, you got to see Corey's view of the relationship, and then you got that omniscient view. Um, I wrote those two books about a year apart because I wrote Blackberry Molasses in the winter spring of 2009, and I wrote Free Your Mind in the winter spring of 2010. And then I would publish the book about a year later. Around the time that not Blackberry Molasses, but Free Your Mind was getting ready to come out. Um, well, let me back a little bit first. When we launched the Cedric Quincy brand and started doing the Cedric Quincy books, like my initial bio said, I was DL, I was discreet, I had a family, I did not want to be out and broadcasted as Cedric Quincy. A large part of that had to do with the fact that I am, outside of writing these books and, being active in different literary groups and community, I am a very private person. Like, I'm kind of like how some people view it's okay to talk about me, but you leave my family out of it. Like, I don't bring my, children, grandchildren into anything I'm doing literary. even now, even though my wife is in the industry and does, work both as a writer and as an editor and a graphic designer, I'm very proud. Like, I want things commemorating our marriage to be private to us. I don't want everyone in, my business, as far as everyone knowing, oh, we went out to eat. Everyone knowing, oh, we had a date. We just celebrated our anniversary. I want some
Okay.
to have some kind of.
Okay. So let me ask you this: your wife knows that you're Cedric Quincy, though, right?
Oh yeah, she knows.
Okay. I
Yeah,
was
she
just trying to
knows.
clarify that.
She she knows. She read the book. She loved them. Like, her favorite book. Her favorite book, I think, is actually the first one. Although she likes the second one too, but I think her favorite book is the first one. Um, so everything was fine when the first two books came out, but shortly around the time book two actually made it to print, I was outed as Cedric Quincy. So what was once a secret, separative world between the type, because when I write LGBTQ fiction, whether I'm writing for about men having sex with men or women having sex with women, I'm a erotic writer. So a lot of my eroticism comes out in those things. A lot of those sexually exploratory situations come out in those books, which is very, 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 very different than what I write when I write mature teen fiction. My mature teen fiction, they're mature as far as the situation, like, language wise. I might be an ass held down and slips out every now and then. Like, there might be one of those words in the whole book. Very, very rare do you see. I may allude to the F word because, let's be honest. We know these. We was cussing up a storm when we were teens. So, I know these kids are out there doing and saying different things, but it allowed me to talk about their situations. And a lot of what made that brand really pop was that it wasn't cookie cutter. It wasn't preachy. I dealt with the situations as they were while being real, but I wasn't as graphic because, I also had that street lit background too, and a lot of my teen lit books have some of those, street lit urban fiction elements in it. And when I was outed, it made things for my teen line very difficult. I went from having a brand that, had possibly really grow and blossom and flourish the way we thought it would, to everything came to a screeching halt. Like, I went from being invited into schools, speaking at community events, continuing a young adult brand, to having nothing. Like, my sales dropped dramatically,
Wow.
because I was outed, and I was outed by someone who, it was done maliciously, by someone who was angry at something that I didn't necessarily do directly, but I knew someone that had done something to them. And they, of course, being that this person was supposed to represent me in the industry, it kind of hurt because it was like, you knew that I wrote this person. You're supposed to, because you're working with me, you're trying to help me, build these brands and maintain everything. You knew how vulnerable I would be if it got out that I was writing Cedric Quincy. And then the other piece to that is, I had a production deal that, with this particular company, and the initial plan was, what we when we finally got all the pieces together, because it took us a while to even come up with how we were going to do it. Someone else was going to come out as Cedric Quincy, and I was just going to be in the background writing books. So Cedric Quincy was going to remain a ghostwriting project, and the other LGBTQ books that I written were also to remain as a ghostwriter. Now that still carried, but when that got revealed, that kind of ruined. And although, granted, thank God, the person who's supposed to step out of Cedric Quincy couldn't by this point, and we hadn't really started on that part of the plan yet. We were getting ready to,
Uh-huh.
but it put me in our position because these people who helped me do my Cedric Quincy brand also help finance my company. And as a result, if you know anything about ghostwriting, one of the things is, if you do tell that you wrote those books for people and you're out of term, which, although I didn't tell, indirectly I was out of term, I had to pay back a lot of money. I had to buy the rights back to the books. And even when it came to finishing book three, I couldn't even get my mind, like, I had started book three, in the same format that I had started the first two books in. But the version of book three that I initially wrote was like I couldn't even wrap my mind around finishing it. I had no desire to, even want to complete it because I was kind of very angry and upset that my team brand had been ruined. And it was something I had worked on for years to really get there.
Yeah,
But
it sounds. I'm sorry. It sounds like we could really get into a very detailed, in discussion here. But I just wanted to ask you, your did you purposely like for this series? Did you purposely name your main character Cedric? I mean, it's kind of like an unusual move for a fiction author.
mhm.
And what else do you share with this character besides the name?
um at the time, some of the physical descriptions, but with Cedric, that was more or less coincidence because I had wrote the story before we decided what my pen name was going to be. And initially I had wrote LGBTQ fiction on blackmen.com as Jamal Quincy Tyler. So a lot of people, if you're one of those really older seasoned readers, that you remember I wrote a book called Walter's Friend on that site, which became a toned down teen novel and in my teen series. And we had decided not to use that name. And I can't remember why, but we had decided not to use that name. But we kept Quincy in part because it was an allusion to the fact that I've been here before. But now I lost my train of thought. What did you ask me?
Just
I
asking the
can't think of
comparison
time.
between the
Sorry.
characters.
Oh, but Cedric, yeah. So I had actually wrote because I think when we started publishing, like when I first published the first couple chapters, I wrote it without saying what my pen name was, and we were playing around with it. And actually, in the original team I had around me that were helping me with this brand, I had someone named Cedric, who's whose bio that when you read it is partially his. Had someone named his name wasn't Quincy, but his name starts with a Q. So he pretended to be Quincy. So it was like, and then I had other people in the team. So that's how that came to be. It was like when we finally did, I said, okay, well, Cedric Quincy.
All right. Sounds good. So, most recently, you published Where the Players Dwell along with three other authors. So, first, before we get into, how you actually made that book, um,
I'm sorry, what was the question? I think my screen phased.
oh, okay. One more time. Saying Where the Players Dwell, you wrote this with four other authors.
Yeah.
Before we get into the authors, like as far as story, because I think that would be a pretty interesting
Mhm.
discussion. What can you tell us about this book? What's the story about?
Oh yeah, the book. Thank you. The book is about a possibility of a gay couple getting married, or two men that are in a gay relationship getting married. Um, and these guys have been together for a while, and they decide, like, they came, visited. I lived in a tourist town and in a tourist area. So they came to Western North Carolina, fell in love with it, said, oh, we want to get married here, especially since in the larger city, metropolitan city that I live in named Asheville, um, gay rights and marriage is very open, very accepted. It was accepted here probably before it was nationwide. It was probably one of the first and more recognizable quote unquote gay havens, if you will, um, in the nation. So it's like they fell in love with that idea and concept. So they said, okay, we want to get married here. And then you figure the main character, Lent, has his best friend, best man. He has his ex-boyfriend that he's still cool with. Then he has his cousin that looks up to him and is slightly attracted to him. And then he has his business partner that, he knows that he views, like sexually they're attracted to each other, but they would never cross that mind because money is what, I mean, they make their bread and butter together, so they're not going to do anything to threaten that. But the question does comes that, when you get all these men together and all their different feelings towards Lent together, will Lent end up marrying high, or will he end up marrying someone else?
Mm, concept. It sounds like the plot for a movie or something. So
Yeah.
you should think about that. So what was it like to collaborate with three other authors on the same story?
I loved it. It was the first time I actually got to do something in the community with three other authors. I've done collaborative works before. That's how a lot of my ghostwriting stuff is done. But, first person that answered the call was Tyson. And I was like, this is the idea I have. I think it'd be hot. I really wanted to do something with a couple of other authors. And it was like, yeah. And then we drafted um, some characters together. Then Jackson, I've known Jackson for, years. Met him and Carter J. Banks on, like I said, Black Men, or what is now, or what was later known as blackmenfornow.com. In fact, Jackson wrote the one of the blurbs I received for Blackberry Molasses. So I always thought it was awesome that I'd be able to create, collaborate with them as well. And another thing was, at the time, you haven't seen too many, LGBT, like, you can always get romance authors. Because, when I study the industry, I'm thinking broad scale, not just the genre we're in. I'm looking at the industry as a whole. You can always get two, three, four romance novels together to do a book. You can always get a couple of street lit authors to pair up or tag team and do a book. In fact, that's how the genre grew. You met other um, urban fiction street lit authors by reading their works in other anthologies. Black fiction, when we blossomed in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was being in different anthologies, different erotic correct collaborations or anthologies that we introduced. So I was like, okay, this would be a good time because, for me, this was, 2016 was a comeback year. I finished Free Your Mind in 2000, published in 2011. I didn't come back and write and finish the version of where I want to be until 2016. So it was like, okay, it's time. We haven't had, I think the last collection that featured any Black authors even was Visible Lies, which was the tribute to Elin Harris that Stanley Clay Bennett, Terrence Dean, and James R. Hardy had done. And then that had been years ago. So I was like, it'd be fun if a group of us got together again. And that's how that happened. I mean, working with them, a lot of instant messages. I think I'm the reason some of them might have their instant messenger turned off. I send a lot of messages. I'm very, if you've ever worked for me if I've ever been your editor, I'm very detailed. I'm very goal oriented. I kind of have, a plan in place. And like I said, I can't help it. I'm an educator at heart. I sometimes go off on a tangent. I say a whole lot of different things. So my goal is to really make sure you understand and be part of and really see the vision as I see it. So, we did that, and like I said, I had a lot of fun working with them on this book.
Very cool. Very cool. Glad to hear that. So, in the front matter of the book, it's written that elements from an upcoming novel, Rock Stars, and the web series Farm are in this book. So, what are you the upcoming book, and is there a web series in the making?
Well, for web series, I answer that question first. Not sure if we're gonna do a web series with Where the Players Dwell. I'm open to the idea. We can get it together. I'm ready for it. I've been wanting to do a web series for a while now, especially after being involved with a couple of them, either through financing and raising money for them, or just doing little advertising promotion for them, or just being a fan saying, hey, check it out. Um, as far as rock stars will feature two other authors. Not saying yet which two they are, but it'll be two different authors. And with rock stars, the R&B couple that you meet, or not couple, R&B group that you meet in Where the Players Dwell, this is going to be their book.
Okay.
So what'll happen is, um, and I'm kind of odd when it comes to doing series. When I name a series, the title series is almost never book one. It's usually book two, book five. I mean, I view, maybe because I have a background in music and being interested in albums and stuff like that. You notice the title cut is not always the first track. So it's like when I release books in a series, like for example, my Christian series technically is called Street Disciples series. Street Disciples is book number two. Rock Stars happens to be book number two in this series. Of my teen series, the Hold On Be Strong series, Hold On Be Strong is book number 6 or 7. So I definitely, I can't help it. That's just how this is how I operate. But
It's
then
all
after Rock Stars, what will happen is each individual member of the group will have their own book, which I'm writing some, and I know a couple of other authors will be contributing writing some of those as well. So I'm kind of trying something different here where it becomes a collective thing where many different authors are able to contribute to different characters or different books.
okay. Sounds good. So, well, I have something to look forward to. So where can everybody find your books and yourself online?
All right. Books. As far as Cedric Quincy books, you can definitely order them from any brick and mortar bookstores. You can definitely get them on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. As far as electronic devices, Kobo, Kindle, and Nook, they're all available on those sites. They should be available on we're still working on. I gotta get me a new Mac. I mean, that's the reason, that's the holdup. I need to get a Mac Pro or a new Mac computer. But once I get that later this year, we plan on uploading all of my Cedric Quincy and other titles to iTunes and being able to do that. So I plan on hopefully being on all formats by the end of this year. And Lord willing, Blackberry Molasses will come out as an audiobook in December. That's the target date, December.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
So
All right. Well, I thank you so much for joining me for the interview, Cedric. And lastly, just for anyone who's interested, I do have a book available as well. It's for free, so just head over to my website. I will put a link up at the video. Thank you so much for watching tonight. And thank you, Cedric.
thank you for letting me be a part. I'm glad I was here.
You have a good night.
All right, same for you.